So in standard form, some of these things are really easy to find. Remember, axis of symmetry we learned was x equals negative b over 2a. So in this case, right, we could use the negative 20 and the 2 to figure out the axis of symmetry. Vertex is a little tricky to find. We haven't really talked about that. Roots, you can do the quadratic formula, which is the song, or we can factor, which is when we did, if you remember back, that's when we kind of did the little puzzle where we set up the boxes and tried to pick our two numbers. Also, the y-intercept is really easy to find from standard form, right? In this instance, it's 0.53. Remember, the y-intercept is always just the number that's without a variable. So really, standard form is okay, but it's not, when you look at the equation, it's not super easy to see all of the information you need. However, vertex form is very easy to find a few different things. So in vertex form, we can find the vertex, which is what we do first. Remember, inside is the opposite, outside's the same, so this vertex would be 5, 3. Axis of symmetry, because it's the x value then, is just x equals 5. And then the y-intercept and the roots, those two are a little bit trickier. So there are some pros and cons to each form, but sometimes vertex form is a little easier to work with if we have to actually graph something. The other thing that you all should remember, you are pretty good at, is remembering this number in the front is kind of like, and I'll put it in quotes, our slope. So vertex form is just the easiest to graph, so that's probably something you need to write in your notes. All right, so I'm going to do probably 2 examples today. I just want to show you real quick how to complete this square. And what you see on your screen right now is where we're going to be by the end of the week. Today, we're just going to do a really, really small piece of that. So let's look at a few examples. All right, so in our first example, we're just trying to find this missing value at the end. So I've got 3 different options here. The first way I'm going to show you is actually to think about a square. So remember, what makes a square special is that it's the same length on each side. So if they give me this x squared value, I know the only way to get x is to do x times x. That's what gives me x squared. I'll do that in a different color. All right, and then I need to think, how can I split negative 8 apart so that it's the same on both sides? Well, to do that, I could split it into negative 4 and negative 4, right? I'm cutting that in half. And if I multiplied, this would give me negative 4x, negative 4x. Think about this like a Punnett square or just like a multiplication chart. And then this last box down here, that's the one that's super important, is going to be negative 4 times negative 4, which is 16. All right, this 16 is the only value that I haven't actually been given in my equation, so that means the answer is 16. Another way to do that, you may notice, is to think about how to split this number in half. So for example, on B here, half of 10 is 5. And so to find my last number, I just do 5 times 5, or 5 squared. 5 times 5 is 25. So in our last example here, I want to break 18 apart into a perfect, like in half. And so half of 18 is 9. So if I do 9 times 9, or 9 squared, that's going to give me this last number, which is going to be 81. Notice that no matter whether the number you pick is negative or positive, this last value is always positive, because even a negative times a negative is a positive number. All right, so I'm going to stick with showing you 2 different methods again. Here we're going to be writing perfect squares, so very similar to what we just did. If we think about the box, remember x squared splits apart to be x, and 20 splits apart to be 10, positive 10, and positive 10. Now, remember, the only number that we are really going to care about to some extent in the end is this final number, which is going to be 10 times 10, which gives me 100. So we can plug 100 in here, and we should do that and write it that way. But the answer that we're going to write is x squared plus 20x plus 100. But we want to write that as a perfect square, and that's to say, I know that this is a perfect square because both sides of my box have the same value. That's x plus 10 times x plus 10. And since it's the same thing twice, we can write that as x plus 10 squared. All right, so this is the answer really that we're looking for. Last example, I can split -4 apart. -2 and 2. Remember, I'm not doing multiplication. I'm cutting it in half, which is going to give me -2 times -2 is +4. So I can go ahead and write this as x minus 2 squared. That's the end. Now, the reason some people like this as a shortcut is they see -4, and when they cut it in half, they go ahead and write the parentheses. And then the parentheses themselves give you a hint that you're doing -2 squared, which is multiplying it by itself, which is what gives you this 4. So some people, like this little step I'm circling in red, is done in their head, and they're able to just go ahead and write the answer without having to show too much work. It is up to you, whatever method you decide, but you need to be good at this skill because we're going to add another step to it tomorrow.